Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So next week they'll be releasing a new lockbox, which will contain a new mount and a new artifact. I can check it out here on the preview test server. Just be aware, the artifact currently has a placeholder icon. But there are a few other things I want to cover in this video too, such as the previous lockbox, which you can still obtain on the live server, which has this mount that I didn't actually test yet. Additionally, I've gone and updated my mount document, which is a full list with all the 4-slot mounts and all the insignia bonuses they bring. This, for example, helps you find all them 4-slot mounts that would have Gladiator's Guile. Simply Ctrl F and search for it. This is the current list. If there are any errors, feel free to leave it in the comments below or message me on Discord. So again, before we open this new lockbox and check out the new mount, let's quickly test the combat power from this one. Grubshank Smash, which in total has well over 3000 magnitude. So we can make sure to check our damage here based on the stats we have, and we get that correct when filling out the formula table as per what we see in game and also on the ACT. So then we will use the mount combat power, hopefully get a crit and not a deflect, as it's just easier to confirm, and we can see it hit for 900,000. That is at a magnitude of 1800. Currently I have this on physical damage boost, which is 6.5. We'll switch that over to magical 3.75. It visually rounds up, and we can see it checks out with 1800 magnitude, scaling off magical damage boost. As for the extra 5 hits here from the dot, that should combine to 1725 magnitude, so that divided across 5 hits is 345 magnitude, which indeed checks out what we see here, which means the mount is magical scaling, the 1800 magnitude is correct, and the dot is correct, with a total magnitude of 3525. If I'm not mistaken, the highest magnitude damaging mount power. You just need to make sure at the endgame level that 5 seconds is within the full artifact call to make the most of it. This lockbox was ultimately one of the best to open. I do recommend stocking up on a bunch of these, particularly because it has those combat enchantments, with the Rhyme Temper being best in slot for tanks and Swift Synergy being best in slot for most damage dealers because it has a bit more item level. But yes, while you're within a party. Moving on, we go to the new mount from this new lockbox. First, we have to open most likely 250 of these, and we'll get the guaranteed pack. But you can see all the drop chances just on the tooltip here. So I will just do this quickly, as nothing really else seems to have changed in this lockbox other than the top rewards. As normal, I would always only recommend opening these boxes if you have enough keys to guarantee to obtain the top rewards by opening 250, or you're just going for the trade bars and just open 5 of them. Otherwise, don't be overly disappointed on the lockboxes you open because trade bars are still very, very valuable. In this session, we did obtain nearly 10,000 trade bars, which is around the expected mark. We got that choice pack at 250, and we did get 2 of the mounts within 250 as well. That's very lucky. But unfortunately, the artifact probably doesn't work here on the preview test server. But we will open the choice pack. I will claim the set of dice, which is supposed to be the artifact, and you can see it is indeed a dice. So it's not something I can test out in this video, and we can't even see the stats that it's going to have. So we can look at that later when they officially release this lockbox on Tuesday next week. But we can check out the new mount, as that appears to work properly. Equipping it correctly gives us the combat power, but as for the equip power, we seem to already have it, and it's simply just combat advantage and crit severity bonus, nothing game changing there. But the combat power looks to be 3300 magnitude against a boss with a stun, but that's only going to be on non-bosses. But since this appears to be able to deal all its damage in one hit, it could definitely be a contender for the top mounts. And let's also confirm, is it magical or physical? So we go to cast it, here's the animation, and we get 1.54 million. Confirming in the ACT, we did indeed get that damage value. So it should be 3,300 magnitude, potentially only 3,000 because this is not a boss. And we can see that value is close, but if we then take our physical damage boost, bar some roundings, we get that value. So this mount is actually physical, because again you can see my physical is 6.5, magical is only 3.75. And again it's 3,000 magnitude against these dummies. We need to go to a boss dummy, or a boss in general, in order for it to do that extra 300 magnitude. And that would make this mount special versus other 3,000 magnitude mount powers. Right now, the majority, I believe, unless you're using that newer Grubshank Smash, you would use Big B's Hand as a physical damaging mount power. And then there are a lot of other magical ones, including Tunnel Vision, Golden Warhorse, Giant Toad. Double checking our stats, we have slightly lower power. So adjusting those values, we are much closer to what we were actually getting here with the 154. I should have done those adjustments after changing the equip power from what I had previously. But we can go to test again, casting the mount. We get 1.7. And this is across 2 hits. We can see that clearly in ACT here. So what we are actually getting is 1 hit of 3,000, that checks out, but then another hit of just 300. And we will see a damage value of 1.7 in game, as the damage floaters will stack. But yeah, in the combat logs here, and confirmed on ACT, it is 2 hits. 1 of 3,000 and 1 of 300. But yeah, then it works, and it scales with physical damage. A very good ability for instantaneous damage. But I wouldn't say this mount's a must-have. Again, you could use the previous mount's lockbox, which will have a little bit higher total magnitude as you see here, versus the new mount, which is 3,300 but physical scaling. If you're curious as to what's mathematically better with my values of physical and magical damage boost, you can see it would still be better to use Grubshank by 4%. But again, keep in mind, Grubshank needs that 5 seconds to accumulate all that damage. And those 5 seconds, the debuffs of the artifact call may not be properly aligned, and thus you miss damage versus an ability which just deals that damage in 1 hit at the peak time in an artifact call. And we can simulate an artifact call here. My stats won't change, but what does happen is we get a damage buff here, and we cause the target to take significantly more damage, like 3 to 4 times more. So we can cast the artifact on the target, make sure we're in combat here, and then cast the mount power. We will do so again to make sure we get a crit, and nearly 7 million. Looking on ACT, we can confirm those damage values, and if we look at the math and the comparison, we are doing 4 times more damage when we account for all these buffs that buff for artifacts giving to simulate an artifact call. And yeah, it seems to scale properly with all of these stats then. Reducing the enemy's defense awareness, crit avoidance, the debuffs, the damage buffs. So the mount works, and it's pretty much best in slot for certain situations when you want that instantaneous damage. In other cases, Grubshank can be slightly better, but again for reliability, and if artifact calls are not going to last for even the full 10 seconds, I would go with this new one. But as for whether the lockbox will be worth opening, I can't really conclude anything yet until we can see the new artifact. But ultimately that concludes the video. A special thank you to all my channel members for your added support. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys around.